In this video, we will share 3 terrifying police stories that will give you chills. These tales come from real-life officers who faced scary situations while on duty. Being a police officer on a dark night, hearing strange noises, or finding something spooky in an old abandoned house. These brave officers experienced moments that were so scary, they still remember them today. Stay tuned for these spine-chilling stories. Today's stories are real experiences lived by police officers. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. It helps me create videos for you. My name is Mike, and all my life, I wanted to be a police officer. The story I'm about to tell happened when I was quite new in service. The unwritten rule was that the people with less service would get assigned to do the most unpleasant tasks. High up on that list was dealing with unexpected deaths, especially during summertime. So off I go on a lovely day in the middle of July, which would have been great for celebrating life, except I got to experience the end of it. My sergeant told me I was expected to attend a flat where the occupant was found deceased. An officer was already there. They had checked the premises and there was nothing suspicious. I was supposed to relieve my colleague and wait for the undertakers. I tried to conceal my disappointment as I made my way to the flat. It was a small, stuffy apartment, and as soon as I walked in, I could feel the heat pressing down on me. The previous officer briefed me quickly and left, glad to be done with the call. I walked into the bathroom, where the body of an older man was still on the toilet, slumped onto his side. His skin was pale and cold, eyes closed. He must have been dead for a good few hours as the body was already stiff. The smell in the small bathroom was overwhelming, and I felt my stomach turn. Since there was nothing suspicious about the death, I decided to wait in the living room for the undertakers. The bathroom door stayed open, and I could see the body in my peripheral view. I pulled out my phone to check my messages, trying to distract myself from the eerie silence and the oppressive heat. Suddenly, I heard a sigh and saw the body moving. My heart skipped a beat, and I jumped to my feet, running to the front door, scared for my life. I listened, but no sounds could be heard. Gathering my courage, I went back to the body and found its position had changed a bit, but the man was still clearly dead. I spent the rest of the time until the undertakers arrived, standing by the front door, terrified. When they finally got there, I quickly told them about what had happened. They started laughing and explained that this often happens when someone dies in a specific position and the air gets trapped in their lungs. If the body shifts positions, the air may get released, making it seem like the body sighed. It was just an illusion, they said. I accepted their explanation, but I was shaken and struggled to process what had happened. This was not the kind of police work I had imagined as a kid. It was scary and confusing, and I felt alone in dealing with these strange and unsettling situations. As the undertakers were preparing to take the body away, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this place. I walked around the flat, trying to distract myself. That's when I noticed something odd in the living room. A photo of the deceased man with a younger woman, both smiling happily. But the more I looked at it, the more the woman in the picture seemed familiar. I realized with a chill that she looked like someone I had seen recently. Suddenly, it hit me. A few months ago, we received a call about a woman who had gone missing. Her name was Emily, and she was last seen in this very neighborhood. The case had gone cold, and I remembered feeling frustrated that we couldn't find any leads. Could this be the same woman? Was there a connection between her disappearance and the man's death? I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, but my gut told me otherwise. I decided to dig deeper, hoping to find some answers. I contacted the missing persons unit and shared my suspicion. They agreed to reopen Emily's case and investigate further. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation revealed some shocking discoveries. It turned out that the man who died on the toilet was Emily's uncle. He had a troubled past, with a history of mental illness and erratic behavior. Neighbors reported hearing strange noises and seeing unusual activity around his flat late at night. Eventually, We uncovered evidence that suggested Emily had been living with her uncle before she disappeared. She had been trying to help him through a difficult time, but something had gone terribly wrong. We found traces of her belongings in the flat, and it became clear that she had been there recently.
The more we dug, the more we realized that the uncle might have been involved in Emily's disappearance. But before we could get any more answers, he passed away, taking his secrets to the grave. The case remained unsolved, but we had enough evidence to believe that Emily's disappearance was connected to her uncle's troubled life. Reflecting on that day in the flat, I understood that being a police officer is not just about catching bad guys or solving thrilling cases. It's about facing the unknown, dealing with the unexpected, and sometimes confronting the eerie and unexplained. That day in the flat was a reminder that every call, no matter how routine it seems, can lead to something truly unforgettable and spine-chilling. My name is Jake. It all started with a domestic call, the kind that we often get. There was an argument between a wife, her husband, and her mother-in-law. When we arrived at the house, the scene was chaotic. All three family members were shouting at each other, their faces red with anger. We separated them and spoke with each one. My partner talked to the husband in the kitchen while I took the wife to the living room, and the mother-in-law stayed in the hallway, where another officer spoke with her. We captured their accounts on our body-worn video cameras. It was just an argument, and no one was arrested, so we left after ensuring everyone had calmed down. A few days later, I was back at the station and decided to review the body-worn video from that call. As I watched the footage, I felt a chill run down my spine. The mother-in-law, who I remembered clearly, was not visible in the video. Instead, there was just a dark shadow where she should have been, and her voice was scrambled and eerie. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I checked all the footage from that night, and it was the same in every video. The shadow, the scrambled voice. It was like she was disappearing before our eyes. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of it. Was it a glitch in the camera, or was something more sinister at play? I decided to contact the family to see if everything was okay. When I called, the wife answered, sounding distraught. She told me that her mother-in-law had died of a heart attack the day after we visited. My blood ran cold. It was almost like her body was disintegrating in anticipation of her death. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the shadow in the video and hearing the scrambled voice in my head. I returned to the station the next day and told my partner what had happened. He looked at me with a mix of concern and disbelief, but he agreed to help me investigate further. We visited the house again, hoping to find some clues. The wife greeted us at the door, her eyes puffy from crying. She led us to the living room, where we sat and talked. She told us that her mother-in-law had always been a difficult woman, often stirring up trouble in the family. But she had never imagined something like this would happen. As we talked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The house felt heavy, like a dark cloud was hanging over it. We asked the wife if we could see the hallway where the mother-in-law stood during the argument. She led us there, and as soon as I stepped into the hallway, I felt a cold draft brush against my skin. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. We inspected the area, looking for anything unusual. My partner noticed a faint stain on the floor right where the mother-in-law stood. It looked like a dark, shadowy mark, almost like a burn. I reached out to touch it, and a sharp, icy pain shot through my fingers. I pulled back, shaking my hand to get rid of the sensation. My partner and I exchanged worried glances. We had no explanation for what was happening, but it was clear that something was very wrong. We decided to take the footage to our tech department, hoping they could find a logical explanation for the strange images. The techs examined the video but were just as baffled as we were. They couldn't find any technical issues with the cameras, and there was no sign of tampering. The shadow and scrambled voice remained a mystery. That night, I went home feeling more unsettled than ever.
I kept thinking about the mother-in-law, her shadowy figure, and how her voice had been distorted. I wondered if she had been trying to tell us something, a final message from beyond the grave. A few days later, I received a call from the tech department. They had dug more and discovered that the house had a dark history. Years ago, a woman had died there under mysterious circumstances. She was the mother-in-law's sister, and the family had never discussed it. It was said that her spirit haunted the house, seeking revenge for her untimely death. Suddenly, everything made sense. The shadow, the scrambled voice, the eerie feeling in the house, all connected to the restless spirit. The mother-in-law's death had somehow triggered the haunting, bringing the spirit's anger to the surface. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried, and the dead have a way of making their presence known. One night, we received a call about a secluded road in the countryside. The caller sounded distressed, repeatedly saying they needed help. We traced the location, and when we arrived, we found an abandoned vehicle. All the doors were open, including the trunk. No one was in the car. We searched the area and found footsteps leading to the nearby wooded area. It was dark, and we had to use flashlights to see. The trees loomed over us, casting eerie shadows. As we walked through the woods, we heard a faint cry. It sent shivers down my spine. We followed the sound and found a man crouched down under a tree. He was very scared and crying, his body covered in cuts and scratches. We tried to speak with him, but he was terrified. We managed to restrain him, but he tried to fight us. We took him to the hospital, and when he recovered, he told us he didn't remember much. He said he was driving on his way to see his parents. A woman was hitchhiking, and he felt sorry for her because it was dark, so he stopped to pick her up. The next thing he remembered was running through the woods, feeling someone's breath down his neck, and feeling his clothes torn by a strange power. We checked our records and discovered several missing people reports in the area, all men who disappeared while driving at night. The thought of a mysterious force causing these disappearances was terrifying. We learned that the man, Tom, was still shaken up as he recounted his experience. He described the woman he picked up as pale and ghostly, with long dark hair covering her face. When she got into his car, he felt an immediate dread, like something was terribly wrong. As he drove, the woman remained silent, staring straight ahead. Then, out of nowhere, she let out a blood-curdling scream. Tom said it was the most horrifying sound he had ever heard. He tried to stop the car, but it was as if an invisible force had taken control. The car swerved off the road and everything went black. When Tom woke up, he was in the woods, his body aching and covered in cuts. He felt like something was chasing him, something unseen but terrifying. The feeling of breath on his neck made him run faster, but he felt powerless, as if the forest itself was trying to swallow him whole. We decided to investigate further. My partner and I returned to the woods during the day, hoping to find more clues. The forest seemed less menacing in the daylight, but there was still an air of unease. We followed the same path Tom had described, our eyes scanning for any signs of the mysterious woman. We came across a small clearing and found an old, abandoned house. It looked like it had been there for decades, forgotten by time. The windows were broken and the door hung off its hinges. As we approached, a cold breeze blew through the trees, sending chills down my spine. Inside the house, we found old, dusty furniture and cobwebs covering every corner. There were photos on the walls, black and white images of a family from long ago. In the corner of one of the photos, I saw a woman who looked exactly like the one Tom had described. Her eyes seemed to follow us, filled with a sadness that made my heart ache. We searched the house and found a diary hidden under the floorboards. It belonged to the woman in the photo. Her name was Eliza, and she had lived there with her family many years ago. The diary told a tragic story. Eliza had lost her husband and son in a car accident on that very road. Consumed by grief, She wandered the woods every night, searching for them until she too met a tragic end. The last entry in the diary sent shivers down my spine. Eliza wrote about a curse she placed on the road, vowing to make every man who drove there feel her pain. She wanted them to experience the terror she felt the night she lost her family. As I read her words, I felt a chill in the air. The room grew colder, and I could see my breath forming in the icy air. My partner and I exchanged worried glances. We knew we had to put an end to this. We took the diary back to the station and consulted with paranormal experts. They advised us to perform a cleansing ritual in the woods to lift the curse. It sounded like something out of a horror movie, but we were willing to try anything to stop the disappearances. That night, we returned to the woods with a local spiritual healer. She performed the ritual, chanting and burning sage to cleanse the area. We heard whispers in the wind as she did and felt a presence watching us. Suddenly, the whispers stopped, and the air grew warm again. The healer told us the curse was lifted, and Eliza's spirit was at peace. We hoped this would end the terror on that secluded road. In the weeks that followed, there were no more reports of disappearances. The woods felt less menacing, and the road seemed safer. But I'll never forget that night. The fear in Tom's eyes and the eerie feeling of being watched. Thanks for watching. If you like these spooky stories, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.